This video brought to you by the upcoming CARDAMAJIGS Kickstarter for CUBEAMAJIGS Series 2. CUBEAMAJIGS are reusable booster packs for Magic, Cube, and other TCGs. These new Series 2s feature over 30 pieces of art made by MTG artists, new production methods to prevent pack bulging, and they come pre-made in a 10-pack kit. Good for storage. Check out the Kickstarter at CubeKS.com today to see all the various options and stretch goals. That's CubeKS.com.
Magic's new expansion, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, is a crossover with Dungeons & Dragons. So now's as good a time as any to talk about my favorite creature in the entire D&D universe. It's the inspiration for my favorite deck, the Lich. Liches are the remains of great wizards who embrace undeath as a means of preserving themselves. They further their own power at any cost, having no interest in the affairs of the living except where those affairs interfere with their own. Scheming and insane, they hunger for long-forgotten knowledge and the most terrible secrets. Because the shadow of death doesn't hang over them, they can conceive plans that take years, decades, or even centuries to come to fruition. A Lich is a gaunt and skeletal humanoid with withered flesh stretched tight across its bones. Its eyes succumbed to decay long ago, but points of light burn in its empty sockets. It's often garbed in the moldering remains of fine clothing and jewelry, worn and dulled by the passage of time. In Dungeons & Dragons, the process of becoming a Lich is called the Ritual of Becoming, or the Ceremony of Endless Night. In the Magic universe, Liches are created using one of 3 enchantments. They share a signature effect that turns life gain into a powerful card draw engine, but the way each one does it is a little different. Here's a quick rundown of how they work. The worst one is Nefarious Lich, and it's got a pair of replacement effects. With this one out, instead of gaining life, you'll draw an equivalent number of cards. It's not all upside though. Any damage you take gets replaced by exiling an equivalent number of cards from your graveyard. If you take damage and can't exile the cards, you lose the game. The next best one is the OG, the namesake, Lich. This one has a whole lot of text on it, so buckle up. As Lich enters the battlefield, it sets your life total to 0, but you don't lose the game because its second ability says that having 0 life is just fine. It's got the same effect as Nefarious Lich that replaces your life gain with card draw. When you take damage though, Lich has a triggered ability that makes you sacrifice that many permanents. Finally, if Lich ever hits the graveyard from the battlefield, it's going to trigger its own ability. That'll make you lose the game. Be careful with this one though, because if you're still at 0 or less life when it leaves the battlefield, you're going to lose to state-based effects before that trigger even resolves. The outright best way to become a Lich though is with Lich's Mastery. This one's 6 mana, but the extra 2 mana value goes a long way. It starts off with a pair of killer abilities. First of all, it's got hexproof. Next up, you can't lose the game. Period. Full stop, for any reason. After that, we've got an ability that draws you a card every time you gain a life, as well as an ability that makes you exile something from your hand, battlefield, or graveyard anytime you lose life. These are both triggers, meaning that your life total can still go up or down, unlike the other 2. Keep that in mind because it's going to be important later. Finally, when Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. These draw effects are so powerful, but we've got to do something about these downsides because they're absolutely punishing. Before pulling the trigger and committing ourselves to undeath, we've got to lay the groundwork and create some phylacteries. The process of achieving Lichdom requires the spellcaster construct a powerful magical artifact, or phylactery, in which the Lich stores its life essence. As long as this phylactery is unharmed, the Lich is immortal and can reassemble if it were ever vanquished. For these reasons, Liches take great care in protecting their phylactery from harm, employing decoys, traps, and other defenses. This deck employs a series of enchantments that act like phylacteries, and when combined with any of the Lich enchantments, it can bolster our immortality. Phyrexian Unlife interacts really well with Lich's Mastery. If you're at 5 life and take 10 damage, you'll go to -5 life, but you won't lose the game. If you take another 10 damage, rather than losing 5 life like you normally would, you'll get 10 poison counters. Normally this would make you lose the game, but Lich's Mastery will keep you alive. You can also combine Phyrexian Unlife with Solemnity, which is an enchantment that will prevent you from getting the poison counters at all. You'll still take damage, which will still invoke the downsides of both the Lich and Nefarious Lich, but you won't lose life or get poison counters as a result. If you want to avoid taking damage at all, you can prevent people from attacking you with Island Sanctuary. You can also just prevent damage with Solitary Confinement, but both of these phylacteries require you to skip your draw step. The good news is that we've got awesome ways to draw cards, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. If we don't want to give up our draw step, there's a couple strong options. Worship kind of works like a reverse Phyrexian Unlife. As long as you control a creature, any damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. This will prevent you from crossing the 1 life threshold via damage, but won't do anything to save you from life loss or life total setting effects like the one on Lich. Delaying Shield is probably one of the strongest cards in the deck. Its effect turns damage into counters on Delaying Shield. You can then sacrifice it or destroy it prior to your next upkeep to dodge the life loss, or if you've got Lich out, you can just let the life loss happen. It only cares about damage, so you don't have to worry about it. There's also a creature-based option we can use to dodge the downsides. Platinum Angel gives us a little more freedom to play around with Lich effects, because if an effect tells you to lose the game, you can just tap the Angel and move on with your turn. To shore up any weaknesses in the phylacteries, this deck also runs a whole suite of tricks. Angel's Grace, Intervention Pact, Stifle, Trick Bind, Teferi's Protection, Tail's End, and Summary Dismissal can deal with any activated or triggered abilities that might threaten them, but they can also counter the big nasty downsides of Lich and Lich's Mastery. So I know what you're thinking. We've made some phylacteries, we've performed the ritual of becoming, what now? Honestly though, now that we're immortal, we've got all the time in the world. You can feast on souls slowly using Kambal, Consul of Allocation, or Vizkopa Guildmage. Or if that's not your speed, you can draw a ton of cards using Grey Merchant of Ashfidel, Children of Corliss, Martyr of Sands, or my personal favorite, Tainted Sigil. You can turn small card draw into big card draw by paying mana into Words of Worship, an enchantment that replaces the next card you draw with gain 5 life. Before you do this though, it's probably a good idea to read up on the rules for replacement effects. Just read all of Comprehensive Rule 614, like all of it. Drawing a good chunk of our deck is going to set us up to end the game using one of the most powerful spells in D&D, Power Word Kill. Well, not actually. This is a real spell in Magic now, and I don't run it in this deck, but I do have a way to vaporize nearly any enemy I come up against. Aetherflux Reservoir. Having this out with Lich's Mastery makes it trivially easy to storm off. Every time you cast a spell, you'll gain life and draw cards equal to the number of spells you've cast so far this turn. After a few spells, you'll be able to pay 50 life to fire your laser at someone, then you can crack your Tainted Sigil to gain 100 life and do the same for your other 2 opponents. If you're playing with one of the other 2 Liches, you might have to do a little more work to actually gain the life you need to fire the laser. You can cast Angel's Grace, Lich's Mastery, or Platinum Angel, then sacrifice the Lich that's getting in your way, or you can sacrifice or destroy it and stifle the lose the game trigger if you're above 0 life, or if something like Phyrexian Unlife is keeping you alive. The tools are all there and you've got a big chunk of your library in your hand, so get creative. To lead the deck, I've chosen Tymna and Kydele. I like these 2 because Tymna brings inevitability and increases card velocity, and we've got just about all the tools we need in a 4-color sans red identity. All in all, this is probably the most complex and flavorful deck I've ever created. There are a ton of people out there riffing on this theme using different commanders and color identities, and I love seeing it. If you want to do the same, I encourage you to explore and try new things out. If you've got super secret tech you want to share, hit me with it. There's a ton of effects out there that can put in some serious work in this type of deck. I hope you've enjoyed this look into my favorite deck of all time. There's a link to my up-to-date list in the video description. If you have any questions about how the cards interact with each other, be sure to hit me up in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time. Hey, thank you for checking out the Spike Feeders on YouTube. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you close the window, or you can click on this link to check out our other great videos.